Welcome, Build a Geek members, to Opacity and RGBA settings in Dreamweaver. And these are new CSS3 changes that have come out, and they're very awesome. And to work through this this series of their hover CSS animation hover menus and the clickable sliding menus, we're going to be working with a lot of opacity and RGBA settings. So it's very important that we understand these concepts before we move ahead. Now, I stayed away from the RGBA file format for many years and always used hexadecimal values, but RGBA is pretty cool. And the opacity in the new CSS3 settings is pretty awesome also. So let's take a look at it real quick. With the new CSS3 opacity settings, you can make any selector, a class, an ID, or an HTML tag, and you just start it out with whatever, #, dot, div, whatever. And then for opacity, it's just opacity, and I've used 3 of them here, which you wouldn't do, but within the curly braces, you just set the selector to opacity 1 is full-fledged, it's there. 0 is nobody's going to see it, and then 0.1 through 0.9 would be the opacity setting, with 9 being the most solid and 1 being the most faint. Fairly straightforward there. And you can apply that to images too. Like if I said, if I had a div called whatever, and in whatever I had an image, I would just say whatever space img blah blah blah. There you go. Now with the RGBA setting, it's the same thing. You might want to use a font. You can do this to images. You can use this for a background image. Again, whatever. So in this situation, you would just say color, colon, and RGBA values, well, okay, again, is 16.7 million colors that the human eye can see. So instead of those hex values you're so used to, you just use the old 255s, and I believe that's the highest value. You can check it in Photoshop, but that's full force red, full force green, if that were 255. And of course this B over here is for blue, RGB. The 0.6 is the opacity, and opacity works just like opacity back here, where a 9 is the fullest faintness and 1 would be the lightest faintness. So here I'm in middle of the road with that. So I'm going to get rid of this, go into Dreamweaver, and for a sample, and yes, this sample file is available for download. All you have to do is click under the video here at buildageek.com members, and this whole series, everything you're about to see through this hover, click, sliding, animated menus, all of the demo files are downloadable just clicking under the video. But here, now the text, I added some opacity to the text. This header has been cut up. I put a header in the background. So I've got this text faded out using RGBA. I have another background under my text here, and so I have a background image, and then I put a div in here and just made it a bit transparent, and then you can see through the text up here just a little bit. I added a little RGBA to that, and here's what the code looks like over here. For my header here, I have color, RGBA. The text is white, 255, 255, 255, that's white, and 0.6 that fades it out a little bit. Now, then I use a section tag for this little thing here, this little white area where my text sits over it. Use the little rounded corners here. And for this section, I brought in a thing for section text. And so the section text is in the div section, which is actually an HTML tag these days. So dot section text, come down here, RGBA, make it 0.70 so I can see through it, so I can see these lovely people walking around down here. And pretty much that's it. This RGBA setting is very cool, as well as the new opacity setting, which I didn't use here. In my section, I could have said section space IMG and applied opacity dot 0.5, so see through the image. But we're going to, through this portion of these videos, as we go through these sliding menus, we will be using opacity and the RGBA settings in Dreamweaver, and so there you go.